Robert Miller, where do you fall in that broad aviation category?
Oh, that's a well, what we're trying to do at Skydweller is we're trying to develop the world's first commercially viable pseudo satellite. Okay, so let me show some charts here. Hold on. Let me share this.
Okay.
Oh. Can you, who's ever allowing the sharing?
There we go. We just made you a host, Robert.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so this is a picture of Skydweller. It's a large solar-powered aircraft. It's based on the Solar Impulse aircraft that flew around the world. So my co-founder and I had the opportunity to negotiate with the guys who founded the Solar Impulse project, which they built. They raised and spent about $200 million over 14 years to build the world's first real solar-powered aircraft, and then they flew it around the world. And then once they did that, they were trying to figure out what to do with it. And my partner and I convinced them that they weren't really well positioned to sell it into the aerospace defense business, which is the kind of entry point with most aerospace products. And we raised a little over 20 million to get going, and we're still filling out our Series A. And we purchased the aircraft and all the intellectual property associated with it. And it's been, so far, it's been a good experience. We have a launch customer in the U.S. government, and we are in the process of converting it to a drone. It's a new experience for me in that for the first time, this is really an international company. I'm actually in Madrid, Spain right now. And we launched the company first in Europe because the aircraft was built and designed in Europe. So we wanted to capture the intellectual property that's in some of the engineers' heads here and the supply chain before we move it back to the United States. Or we established also a production facility there. So we'll probably have 2 production facilities in the long run. And it's a big aircraft. So it's the wingspan of a 747, but weighs less than a F-150 pickup truck. So it's, we just moved the world headquarters to Oklahoma. And we're going to go after basically 2 big market verticals, which is the government surveillance business and then the broadband communication business. If you think about this as a pseudo satellite, this aircraft, like satellites, started mostly at first with all the U.S. government and the national security infrastructure funding development of these, maturing the technology. And then over time, that technology became mature enough such that people started to do commercially, such that now almost all the communication satellites that get launched are commercial communication satellites. The government buys time, like you buy, your cell phone time. And then, you're also starting to see people launching observation satellites. Well, they've been doing it for, almost 20 years now, and selling that data, I'll call it commodity data, to the U.S. government. And so we think there's an opportunity here for us in the government surveillance market where we have some unique capability, and in the broadband communications market once that we fully mature the technology on the government surveillance market kind of dime and move it to production because of that. So, and I've been in the drone business for 30 plus years, grew up in Oklahoma, and it's a good time to be coming back. Oklahoma's changed a lot. Mayor Cornett, you did a great job in Oklahoma City. It's like when we spoke at dinner, when I left, there was the Oklahoma City Blazers. When now coming back, there's the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's not a little upgrade.
Yeah, changed a lot.
So, and there's a lot of talent there that is now there that we can leverage to build this up. So I don't want to, from an investor side, it's been also an educational experience this time. This is the first time I've really gone out and raised a large amount of money. I mean, our Series A is we're going to oversubscribe it from going from 32 to 40 million. So it's a very large Series A, and it is a different type of business plan than most of the VCs. I went up and down Sand Hill Road in San Francisco, and I went to Stanford as an undergrad, so I know a lot of people. I know a lot of partners in those firms and everything. And this was more of an M&A deal for them than a typical investment thing, where you can kind of think of it as the guys who first did this. They didn't really understand what they were doing. I mean, they were adventurers and stuff like that. The guy who started this project, his grandfather went to the stratosphere in a balloon. His father was the first guy to go to the Marianas Trench in a submarine, and he was the first guy to go around the world in a balloon, in a Breitling balloon in 2000. So, you know, he's an adrenaline junkie, and they did this all on marketing, and he got together with another guy in Switzerland, and they did all this. And when they got done, they had this asset. It's kind of like a piece of property. Say you had a piece of property in downtown Oklahoma City or downtown Chicago, and it was zoned for, farming. And these guys couldn't figure out how to get it rezoned. So some experienced guys in the aerospace defense industry came in. We're going to buy this piece of property. We're going to get it rezoned for commercial real estate and build a skyscraper on it and sell it. And that's basically what we're doing. So, and it's an interesting thing to understand how the kind of the larger investors view aerospace defense, view, how they make investments, and it's been an educational experience for me. So,
Robert, you mentioned government surveillance and broadband communications. Which of those market sectors is probably the largest for you to pursue?
Well, long-term broadband communications is huge. Okay, I mean, that's bigger than the government surveillance market, because you're just servicing all these commercial customers, around the world. I mean, the government surveillance market, what it offers is it offers the investors kind of we know this market is well defined. We know the requirements are well defined. We know the capabilities we bring we differentiate us from other parts of the market, so we can go capture that, and we can get a good return just on that. But at the same time, then there's this upside that's available it's a little hard to quantify, but we know it's huge, that when we mature the technology under the government's nickel, and doing a mission for them, that in the end, when we come out the other side, we're going to have something that's worth a huge amount of money. So.
Any other questions for Robert? Robert, if you want to put your camera back on, I'm still seeing your slides.
Okay, let me.
So how long you been in Madrid, Robert?
Little over a year. Came
Okay.
here last. In August, the kids started American school. So.
Okay.
Robert, is there airspace that's off limits to your aircraft through international treaties or expectations?
We are in the process of working with the Spanish Civilian Air Authority now, and also like their military airworthiness people. That's another reason the commercial communications could take maybe a little bit longer to mature, in that all the regulations for operating unmanned aircraft of this kind of size in civilian airspace, they're not completely defined everywhere around the world. There's no universal agreement on this stuff. And so, yes, there are some places that are we're not allowed to fly right now, but we can get permission a lot of the time to fly there, but it's kind of on a use case basis. It's not just a free for all. So.
All right. Any other comments or questions for Robert?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Is the technology limited to sunny days?
Yeah, I mean, you need sun, so it doesn't operate in Denmark in the winter, okay? But the way they fly is we'll fly up to about, during the day, we can get to 40, 45,000 feet, so we'll be above the clouds. So, you know, in the morning you climb up, then at night, basically you turn off the engines and you coast down to a lower altitude. You turn on the engines, and that coast down is using basically a zero weight battery, because you're putting the energy during the day into two things. You're putting it into the batteries, and you're also putting it into altitude as potential energy. So,
All right, Robert,
And then
thank
what's the top speed?
we cruise about 25 knots at sea level. So up at altitude, you're about 50 knots. So